Hi, this is Luke with the Sandpoint Podcast. Today we're going to be going over Bonner County Ordinance 720. This is going to be the moratorium on MLDs, minor land divisions, and FEs, which are family exemptions. So these are splits that are allowed in the land use code for Bonner County, where we're able to break up property management a little bit different ways. This is typically for small divisions of properties, creating 1 to 4 parcels. And then for larger divisions of properties, we have the Subdivision Act. And so that's where you can create 10 or more parcels. All right, so what we're going to look at today is the method in which Bill Wilson and the Bonner County Commissioners secretively brought this to a vote to bring this moratorium in. Now, they have their reasoning. I don't believe their reasoning is correct. I also don't agree with those kind of methods of dealing with the public, and they more of a almost adversarial way of looking at work. All right, so we're going to take a quick look at how this was brought forward by Bill Wilson, and it looks like conspired with Domke and Asia Williams prior to the meeting. It sounds like they already rounded up their 2 votes for it. I do believe this hit out of the blue for Commissioner Korn. Jacob from the planning department, the head of the planning department, obviously has been working with Bill and a few others on this for a while. There are issues in Bonner County Land Code. There are some, it's not very well written around some of these points. And they do have, I like Jacob, I think they have some validity there with their points. I do not believe they went about this in the proper way. I think they should notice the public. There are several people that are working on family exemptions and MLDs with local land use planners and professionals. I think this is an underhanded thing to do, and it's a very clandestine way to act. And I do not like seeing our local government or our national government acting in such ways, and I think we have to hold them accountable. I do think this is illegal how they acted. That's my interpretation of it. It's other legal professionals' interpretation as well. We'll let that kind of play itself out, but let's go ahead and take a quick look at how they brought this forward. And you can, if you watch these videos, in this video in particular, you can see that this was already prearranged.
All right, we are going to be adding an item to our agenda, but before that, Bill, do you want to explain the authority that the board has to do that and why?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Wilson, and I represent the board as a legal advisor. The planning staff and I have asked the board to amend the agenda this morning to include a proposed moratorium on minor land divisions and family exemptions. And we've done this on an emergency basis.
Okay, so right here they're talking about an emergency basis. Their real reason for an emergency is if they were to properly notice the public, all the people that were in the middle or at the very tail end of doing their FEs, and these are people that have spent thousands of dollars doing this work, having surveys, having things done. I myself have one. I'm in the middle of one right now. I could have rushed and turned it in. I didn't. But there are several other people like myself that didn't get that chance too. So the real emergency here for them is not what they incite or what they reference here. It is the fact that they just didn't want to have to do their job.
Because we didn't want to let people know in advance so that they would come submit stuff. The basis for that is in the Open Meetings Act when there's an emergency, health, safety, welfare. So that's the basis why we're.
He says the reason for that is that they didn't notice it because they didn't want people to come submit it. And then he goes on to say the basis is health, safety, and welfare. No, the basis that you put forward is the fact that you didn't want to put a burden on the staff there to do the work that the staff is paid to do.
We're asking to amend the agenda. It's important that we put that on the record because we are kind of going against the ordinary notice and agenda process.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we will entertain a motion regarding the order of the agenda. Commissioner Domke.
I move to amend the order of agenda to add between the consent agenda and clerk item, the hearing of the ordinance to establish a moratorium on minor land division and family exemption applications.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it to further discussion.
All right, with that, we will ask for public comment on the order of the agenda, not the topic itself, just we're adding it. So any public comment on adding it? All right, seeing none, any discussion from the board?
None.
So I have some. I would like to know what is imminent about this being put on here without proper notice.
So we have experience with issues with MLDs in the past, and at that point when we provided public notice that we intended to change the MLD process, we didn't institute a moratorium, and that resulted in a ton of applications being submitted before we could actually change it. So the problems that we identified, we basically provided the notice for people to come in and try to get their permits before we changed the code. And by way of example, we tried to keep this pretty close to the vest within the organization. Apparently, we were not totally successful at that because yesterday, one of our local land use professionals came in with 7 applications.
That's also a misquote. I have found out that it wasn't 7 and it wasn't the day before. Anyways, he's just making it sound a little more dramatic. But either way, I'm glad the guy got his stuff in. This is a gentleman that makes his living off of providing people with surveys, land use, helping people with MLD processes, family exemptions. He's a local Bonner County resident and that employs people here, and he's trying to help these people do what they can legally do with their land. And Bill and company here are subverting that.
Combination of minor land divisions and family exemptions. So somebody shared this information. And that's just an example of what we were trying to avoid because we want these things to stop. So that's the reason for the urgency, because we wanted to stop as much of that as occurring as possible.
So I guess my question is, what in this creates the imminent peril? I'm having a hard time since this wasn't noticed properly on the agenda is my issue.
Sure. So are you talking about the nature of MLDs and the problem that allowing them creates, or?
What in this agendized item is creating imminent peril? What is so dangerous or life-threatening or whatever the other definitions of imminent peril that this wasn't properly noticed is my question.
I think I tried to just explain that. And just by one other example, what happened yesterday with, one person coming in and submitting 7 applications, it's an example of what we were trying to avoid. If we would have provided the normal amount of notice, like, it would have been last Thursday or Friday when we published, and maybe instead of 7, we would have 70, right? Like if every land use professional in the county who does this sort of thing was put on notice that I got to get these out.
Yeah, it's doubtful you'd have 70, Bill. If you looked at it, all of the MLDs in 2024, you're not seeing 70. Another thing would be if you did properly notice the public, the people that have already spent money going down this road and invested time and money, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars doing this paperwork, doing these surveys, they would actually have the opportunity to finalize the work they've already started. And your planners work with us on a consistent basis. They know that there's probably 30 of these MLDs being worked on right now. So this is just an example of the county dealing with the public in a very underhanded way. And then they try to say, oh, safety, and we're worried about this. That's not true at all. The Planning and Zoning Commission are capable and fully able to deny an MLD, send it to the county commissioners to deny it. If they look like somebody's abusing something or it's unsafe or there needs to be further study, we do that. I was a planning and zoning commissioner for years, and that's something we take seriously. This isn't a major problem. This is something that basically what it comes down to, I believe the commissioners ultimately want to have the ability to vote on everybody's property rights individually. And I think that's a problem. We have a hearing examiner, we have a zoning commission, we deal with these things all the time, we see them, they come before us. It's not that big of a deal. And if there is something where it was a horrible deal, and a lot of the stuff they cite here, fire danger or sewer getting into wells, is total BS. You have Panhandle Health, which is going to be out there and regulating. You have several different government agencies regulating things. Now there are things in our code which are wacky and they contradict themselves when it comes to MLDs and that stuff. Yeah, let's clean that up. There's no need for a moratorium. Literally, you could handle these things like we already do on a case-by-case basis. If there is somebody that's gaming the system or found like you call quote-unquote loopholes, deal with it on a case-by-case basis. Now, these loopholes are bogus. You'll hear people call in, and this thing was totally a sham. We have Matt Mulder from Road and Bridge coming up and acting as the public and saying, oh, it just creates so much drama and so much problems. He works in a department where there are issues with easements and things like that based on road. But to come here and act like you're in support of this and load the place up with people in support of it that are county workers, that's just BS. There's no reason for that. There's no need for that. I'm always going to land on the side of property rights. If you would have noticed this properly, like you should have, and you're required to do, you would have had tons of people show up in opposition of your illegal moratorium. And you didn't do that because you didn't want to have people there. You just wanted to ramrod it through, and you went and recorded this 720 ordinance shortly after this meeting. It wasn't done properly. It wasn't done through the proper channels. You guys need to work through the proper channels just like we have to go through the proper channels. When we want to put forth a subdivision, it has to be noticed. We got to get public opinion. We got to get public input. We're going to just take away people's property rights without giving them the opportunity to tell you that you're wrong and that you're doing something clandestinely and underhandedly. It's a very shoddy way to deal with the public. That's my opinion. That's not working with us in a good spirit, and that's working adversarially against the public. If the planning department doesn't want to have to do their job, maybe we need to shrink the size of it. All right, so this is just part one. I'm going to be back, and there's about 4 more parts and topics I'm going to hit on. Just want to get this out there relatively quick and let the public understand, how the county is dealing with you when it comes to your property rights. They feel good about not noticing the public and loading up the audience with people that are pro their stance and not really allowing us to have a voice who might have a difference of opinion or a different idea on how to deal with these things. This is not necessary. All these guys up here know that we have systems in place where we can handle case-by-case basis for family exemptions and for minor land divisions. All right, thanks. I hope you have a great day, and remember to hit the subscribe button, and thank you for watching.